Green documentaries have been around for as long as climate change became a concept to us, or at least since the 80s. You can open up any streaming platform and get hit in the face with countless conspiracies on how everything we do is killing the planet, each one of them seemingly having a life lesson on what you, as a consumer, should be careful of. Go vegan. Do not go vegan, support local farms. Do not consume dairy. Do not consume red meat, or chicken, or fish. Don't litter, don't smoke. Recycle plastic, but do not buy plastic. Do this, don't do that. But what about us behind the camera? Who are we to highlight this topic without recognizing the impact our industry has on the planet?
A so-called tentpole production, a big drama production or feature film, could have a carbon footprint of just under 3,000 tons of CO2.
Yes, and in terms of waste, the figure that always sticks in my head for waste, 313.5 blue whales in terms of mass.
This number is also the equivalent of the yearly electricity use of 34 homes, or 75 return flights from London to New York. Can you imagine that by making one film, we end up using that much energy? Science tells us we need to halve CO2 emissions by the end of the decade. So how can we get that cut in half? What can we as filmmakers do to make sure that we don't end up harming the planet by making a film that tells viewers not to harm the planet? My name's Anna, and I'm a huge documentary nerd as well as a filmmaker. In this short video, I will be documenting my journey of finding out how green the film industry actually is, as well as looking for sustainable alternatives to current wasteful production means. After confirming that there is a real demand for more self-reflective, or otherwise known reflexive documentaries, I went down the Google rabbit hole in search of studies and professionals to speak to, and reading up on what's been said about the topic so far. That's how I ended up in Wales, attending a training for the Green New Deal project launched by BAFTA Albert.
Albert is the home of sustainability for the screen industry.
The Green New Deal originally started around 5 years ago, and it was a project that was looking over the whole of the UK and the studio sector to try to work out how studios in particular needed to change.
It started with seed ideas and early stage thinking, but that also led us to apply to Albert and the BFI for the Green New Deal work we're doing, and that has given us even more identity working in this area. So then we naturally have been approached by people who are interested in sustainable production and storytelling.
When you're the producer on a show and you pitch your show to the BBC like it, they're going to pay you to do it. You know, you sort of get all this paperwork, and in a lot of the agreements it says like they would like you to do Albert, but it wasn't compulsory. Now, I sort of read between the lines that it's going to be compulsory in a few years, so which it now is. And so when you're filling in the Albert, and I guess it's still the case now, where it's a lot of stuff like how many sets did you build?
Yeah.
You know, do you have generators and that on set and things? So it's very much geared towards that. Because I do think live action actually is more expensive environmentally than animation.
Not to say animation companies are falling behind on making their production as green as possible.
We measure our own carbon footprint in terms of our office space. Yeah. All of the energy that we require comes from renewable sources. In the UK, our office is a relatively new build. We moved in 2018 and it was custom built for us. So it's actually a green building in the sense that everything in it was designed with sustainability in mind. We have a green roof. We have lots of planting on our balconies, you know, those kind of things, in addition to renewable energy, et cetera, et cetera. You know, lights that only come on when someone moves, smart heating and cooling, food waste and recycling services to all of our employees to use. We also provide facilities for battery recycling, for pen recycling, plastic pens, and also have services for recycling our hardware when that becomes redundant.
In terms of companies, it seems like the majority has a solid plan to follow and are doing a great job in greening their footprint. However, nearly 25% of the UK's population identifying as a content creator, it might not be enough if only production companies and studios focus on sustainability.
Companies been created purely for one production of a series or one film, and then those companies disappear or they become dormant again. So trying to develop a transformational strategy for the industry to become more sustainable is difficult when people are changing all the time and what they do changes all the time.
When you've got lots of freelancers coming and going, they don't always have that institutional knowledge of knowing what's been done before, what's been used before, and how you can recycle it.
It feels like being green is still an option right now in some ways versus no, we need to be responsible. And film itself, there's so many people now that have cameras and try to make film, and it's significantly less expensive than it used to be when I was originally at uni. Because of that, if you've got more people that are being wasteful and using these techniques that were sort of the bygone day or the older days, and not realizing that there is this conscious effort made to be green.
Freelance creators don't usually have the professional toolkits to assess their impact, or they just don't know where to look for them. So when employed on larger scale projects, these creators don't always have an idea on how to keep their work green, or just simply struggle to get used to the changes in their practice.
That's about half a day's waste ready to be sorted through. I was there a lot of nights, sitting in the car park. I didn't even have shelter. If it was raining, I had to sort in the back of my van. I knew I couldn't do this work single-handed, so I had to find people in each department who got that this was important.
That's the hardest thing. It's behavior change, getting people to change their way of working. It's an industry where there's a lot of pressure, there's very tight schedules, tight budgets, and I think people are very nervous about experimenting and doing something differently. I think the biggest obstacle is shifting that behavior change.
There are, however, indie creators who have figured out a way to lessen their carbon footprint in creative ways that don't require a big budget.
When we did the series of Pet Saurus, we did it in my home. And I was living by myself in a rented house, but with a smart meter. And so I take the base rate of what the house is doing on the weekend. And then when everybody was in through the hours 9 to 6 or whatever it was, I'd see how much more energy was used and then took away the base rate.
For Ships of Wood, I realized that we basically had a bunch of cardboard that we couldn't recycle because it had gotten wet. So I built a frame, and then I built the entire ship with cardboard and paper mache. Tried to limit using nails. I used glue. All the set I've either recycled now or used to build sets for theater shows. I donated all the wood to a local theater company. I built the frames and everything with that in mind, that this could be something that the materials that somebody else could use again. And it was a challenge as a filmmaker to make a space that was built out of thin plywood and cardboard look like a ship. But we filmed it, we decided to film it in black and white. It looked better. And it ended up working out pretty well. Like I'm content. Some of my friends from the dockyard have seen it and thought that I filmed on location. So
we're also going to try and look into uses of AI to improve our carbon. An idea we've had about that is, I mentioned that we sort of render half res and then we render full res. But you can also use AI to clean up images. So if our computers can render at lower quality and then they get up-res at the end, is potentially an option.
It's about making all of these little habit shifts normalized and mainstream. You can do that across each department of production, no matter what the scale. Yeah. And most of them don't cost anything.
Despite massive efforts to improve production, the issue seems to be the lack of communication. The real problem is not the lack of resources, but the fact that you need to look for them. Associations like Albert and Media Cymru are underrated at the moment, and not enough people see the information they provide. My journey does not end here. I found out a lot, and I decided to share the knowledge with anyone interested who doesn't know where to start. We don't need to be perfect, but with every new piece of information distributed, we can aim for a better, greener future, not just for our industry, but the planet.